Hello there folks, I'm the Lon Chaney Reviewer, and welcome to Silent Film Saturday. This is episode number 14, and today I'm going to be talking about Fritz Lang's 1927 epic, Metropolis. Now, if you noticed, most of Silent Film Saturday, with the exception of the Buster Keaton films I talked about, most of these are silent films that the average person may not be aware of. Films like A Woman of Paris, or Nomads in the North, or even Tell It to the Marines. But something like Metropolis, even a decent portion of people who have never watched a silent film have at least heard of Metropolis, or at least recognize the character of Futura. In terms of silent epics, there are few that are as grand as Metropolis. Very, very few. And today I'm going to be talking about this monumental masterpiece entirely on the camera, because I think it's very important, especially for a review like this, for me to be on camera the entire time. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about the supplemental features of this package. We have this Blu-ray. It's a lenticular cover, and let me just bring this up here. If you notice, I don't know if you can see this or not on camera, but the rings are moving up and down like in the scene in Metropolis. It's a lenticular cover. I think other more recent editions of this have a slipcase, but there's no lenticular cover. I'm not sure about that. But I got this like 2 years ago at my local Suncoast, so that's why I have it like this. Next, let's take this off. Standard Blu-ray, but there is no advertising from Kino in this. It's just actually a pretty decent booklet about the history of this film. Usually what pisses me off about Kino is that they'll have the same old advertising for their products. And I love Kino as much as the next silent film fanatic, but it just gets really annoying and repetitive when you have a bunch of Kino films and all they have are booklets that contain more products. But they really understood that Metropolis was a special release, so I'm glad they just kept with this booklet. Also, if you can see, this is the giant Moloch machine, and there's the Blu-ray disc. And in terms of supplemental features, of course, this has the Gottfried Hubert's score performed by the Rundfunk Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Frank Strobel, presented in Master Audio 5.1. It's a pretty impressive sound for a silent film score. Voyage to Metropolis, a 50-minute documentary. Interview with Paula Felix Didier, or something, curator of the Museo del Cine in Buenos Aires, where the missing footage was discovered for this film, and I'll talk about that. And the 2010 release trailer, which is absolutely spectacular. Let me describe to you the physical history of Metropolis. It first premiered in 1927 as a 153-minute cut. The current cut we have is 148 minutes, I want to say. 148, 149, something like that. And it was cut down severely for mass audiences. And regardless of their changes, the film still didn't do very well at the box office. In America, people did like the imagery and the special effects in the film. However, a tiny film I like to call The Jazz Singer kind of ruined Metropolis's chances of being anything relevant, at least to a 1927 audience. And then for many years we just have seen a very much an incomplete Metropolis. In roughly 2002, I want to say, there was an edition of Metropolis that we thought was going to be the most complete ever. And for the remaining missing scenes, they had to use intertitles or title cards or interstitials, whatever term you want to use. And then in 2008, in a Argentinian film archive in Buenos Aires, they found a 16mm duplication print of Metropolis. Now the footage doesn't look that great, and when you watch the previously missing scene footage, there's a lot of scratches. It doesn't look very good. However, it's good enough for restoration, and that's when they decided to take the best possible print of Metropolis with the best possible releases of those missing scenes and put them into what we all know as the complete Metropolis, which is the most complete cut of the film in existence. which makes me think of M, because M had a 110-minute cut on the Criterion Blu-ray that I reviewed earlier this week, and recently there was about 7 minutes of footage that was rediscovered. So I like it when they rediscover things. So the discovery of this Metropolis footage, I don't like to use the term miracle because I'm not a very religious human being, but it is nothing short of miraculous that we were able to find this footage. And if you know anything about film footage, it's really lucky that we found this at all. Now the story of Metropolis is interesting because personally I'm not a fan of the quote-unquote white messiah storyline where you have a white guy and he's basically the savior. He's the chosen one, like Harry Potter. Star Wars I don't mind as much because it's Star Wars, but still I'm not into the Harry Potter thing or Avatar. There's a lot of those, white messiah storylines I'm just not into. So it's really a shock that I even like this film. So we have basically the character of Frater, who is the son of Joe Fraterson. And Joe Fraterson is basically the leader of the above-ground world of Metropolis, the city, the gorgeous, spectacular new Tower of Babel, and all these trains and cars going all over the place, airplanes flying around. It's the most breathtaking thing you've ever seen. Art Deco heaven. And then, below ground, we have the workers' city. The only reason why the people in Metropolis, in the main city, are able to thrive and survive is because of the workers down below, who have 10-hour shifts. Some of them die of exhaustion, and they get really low wages, which is rather unfortunate. Frater, at the beginning of the film, is a rather careless character. He runs around with different women in his little garden. He's Frater. He's a young man, basically, at the beginning of the film. Then he sees Maria, played by Brigitte Helm, who I'll talk more about her later because her performance is stellar. But basically when he looks at her with the workers' children, he has this fascination that I got to get to know this woman. I am so fascinated by her. So eventually Frater goes down to the workers' city, and for a period of time he is literally doing what the workers do. And there's this big clock, and he has to move the arms where the light goes, and it's a very exhausting process for Frater, and he gets to realize how horrible the life of the workers must be for these poor souls. So then he and Maria fall in love. It's pretty obvious that they do, but I never mind something like that as long as it works for the story, and indeed it does. Another part of the story that's interesting is that Joe Fraterson, his wife was named Helm, and his wife died in childbirth while giving birth to Frater. And he visits Rotwang, played by Rudolph Klein-Roche, who you might recognize as Dr. Mabuse, the gambler. Plays the title character in that film. And Alfred Abel, who plays Joe Fraterson, is also in that film, interestingly enough. Joe Fraterson is talking to Rotwang because Rotwang basically, he's like a genius. He's basically responsible for building all this stuff. And he's a scientist, and he's the type of guy where if Fraterson scientists can't figure it out, Fraterson goes to Rotwang. And he goes to Rotwang because there's these workers' meetings in there, and he's really curious about that, so Rotwang reveals that. But at the same time, Rotwang also reveals that he's a robot named Futura, or we know it as Futura, and he intends on replicating their lover, Helm. Now, the character Helm married Joe Fraterson, but Rotwang loved Helm, which makes him to be a semi-tragic character, and it really adds depth to this story. And that's probably one of my favorite elements of Metropolis, is that Frater isn't the only character. You have Rotwang, the scientist who sacrificed his hand so that way he could try to recreate his love. You have Joe Fraterson, who has lost all meaning and just does whatever because, he just wants to continue his Metropolis. He doesn't want the city to fail, and he doesn't want his son to sympathize with the workers. Another interesting point, later on in the film, Rotwang captures Maria because Maria kind of looks like Helm. That's what I'm speculating. And he uses her likeness for the robot Futura. And things go wrong. And basically he gives the robot to Joe Fraterson so that way he can convince Frater that Maria is not the girl for him, even though this robot is evil. And then the robot decides to seduce all of the people in Metropolis, and they're killing each other for her, literally, in one of the most well-edited sequences in the film. And at the same time, she's also convincing the workers down below to revolt and destroy the heart machine in Metropolis, guarded by Grot. And he's basically kind of like the leader of the workers, in a sense. He's kind of like the Joe Fraterson for the workers, but he's the guardian of the heart machine, basically. And the heart machine is what powers Metropolis. And if they destroy the heart machine, power goes off in Metropolis. And that's why the head, meaning Joe Fraterson, Metropolis, and the hands, the workers, need to be united by the heart, Frater. Like I said earlier, Brigitte Helm is really the highlight in terms of the performances in this film. She is absolutely stunning. In her scenes as Maria, she's this almost heavenly angel-like glow about her. And you just feel that she's the kindest woman you'll ever meet in this film. And then she plays Futura, who is a complete opposite. She's very seductive. She has her shirt down like this sometimes. She pulls it down. She's almost nude, and her, some certain parts are just covered up by very small items. But she's dancing, she's seductive, and she's almost a very sexy character, but she's evil. She's the evil seductress. And she fools everyone. And her demise in the film is almost kind of eerie, but I don't want to spoil that because you really have to see it. And she also plays the characters of Death and the Seven Deadly Sins, which is also kind of interesting. The character for Futura, the character you see right here, played by Brigitte Helm, that somewhat inspired Ralph McQuarrie, one of the design artists for Star Wars, to use that design for the character C-3PO, which is kind of interesting. And when you look at her, it's like C-3PO is a male version of Futura, in a sense, except C-3PO is a good guy. Now, what else impresses me about this film is the visuals. There's the garden at the beginning of the film that Frater is chasing around all of his little, I guess, concubines or girlfriends, whatever. He's chasing them around this garden. There's these peacocks and things, and it creates this really odd world. And and there's fountains, and there's these weird looking trees, and certain paintings look weird, and it creates this odd sort of feeling. Then you have the city of Metropolis, which looks like the coolest future ever. You have the giant Tower of Babel, and you see trains, you see advertisements spinning, you see lights, you see cars going by, airplanes that are, going through between buildings and things. And the great Gottfried Huppert score adds so much atmosphere to this film, and it's like a big anthem almost. The main Metropolis theme, dun 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 dun. It's just masterfully scored film. And the other visual element I like to talk about is the workers' city. The workers' city is very bleak, and as a silent director, Fritz Lang is a master, and you see. Basically, by the mood of the workers, they're all very hunched over like this. They're all wearing these gray outfits, or they look gray because it's black and white, They're wearing these outfits, and they're all hunched over like this, and one gate's opening, the other one's closing, and you automatically know that one group of workers is leaving, taking their break from their 10-hour shift, and another group is only arriving and only beginning their 10 hours of hell. And it was a powerful image. Anything, and then the climax of the film, when they destroy the heart machine, or there's a certain point where the worker city floods, and the only people that are there are Frater, Maria, and Josaphat, who's kind of like Frater's buddy and was once his father's advisor, but he got kicked off because he was unreliable. And the city is flooding. And I get the sense that Fritz Lang was a very ruthless director. There's the stereotype of the very German director with a monocle, and he yells, And I really get the sense that's him, because this scene must have been so exhausting to shoot. There's water pouring everywhere. There's little kids running around. There's just a gigantic mass of people. And the escape is so riveting and so well edited. There's a shot where it's like, it moves like the camera moves like that, and you see like Maria and Frater fall down. And it's really interesting because it's like a nice little camera movement, but at the same time, it's just like, it's almost interacting with the scenery in a sense. I also want to talk about Rudolf Klein-Roche, who masterfully plays Rotwang. He's one of my favorite characters in the film, because he's the mad scientist. He's the mad scientist who literally sacrificed his hand. He literally sacrificed his hand in the name of science, and also for his love, Helm. And I get the feeling, it'd be interesting if there was a prequel graphic novel to Metropolis. I don't know, I get that feeling that somebody should write a graphic novel about the beginning of Metropolis. And he's basically the stereotypical mad scientist character, and he's got the long hair, he's got the big buggy eyes, and he's just running around, and he's crazy, he's in isolation. He's almost like a magician too, because he has like these library of books, and there's like certain things that are in his house. His house is very old-fashioned, by the way, in the comparison to the rest of Metropolis, and I find this kind of interesting. It just stands still in time. That and like the cathedral that's in the film, which is a beautiful cathedral in the film. Alfred Abel as Joe Frater, I really liked his character a lot, and he played it very well. And he reminds me of Alan Garcia's character in Modern Times. They have a very similar look about them. They're both very much like Henry Ford. They're like the factory owner. They're the guy that's pushing, the longer shifts, and they may or may not care about their workers. And I think Chaplin made Alan Garcia as the factory owner as a conscious choice. And I'm very sure that Chaplin saw Metropolis. I mean, a lot of people in Hollywood, and like a lot of the big Hollywood people at least, must have saw Metropolis at the time. Another really great scene in the film is when Frater is realizing, about the horror of Babylon, and there's a priest that's talking about the horror of Babylon. It's this really well edited sequence of like these men who are just like drooling over Futura, the evil Maria, in her very scantily clothed appearance, and she's dancing around, and she looks like the horror of Babylon that's pictured in the book that they present in the film. And it's it's like just kinetic energy. It's like one of the few sequences where I can say it's pure kinetic energy. There's really no lost momentum in that scene. And then when you see evil Maria as the horror of Babylon on top the creature with 7 heads, it's just such a powerful moment, especially with the Gottfried Huppert score. It's just like going up, and then bah. I know you kind of have to see the movie to understand that, but one of my favorite scenes in the whole film regardless. It's just an incredible movie. You have to see this film, even if you don't like silent films. Even if you don't like any of the films that I have right here, you need to see Metropolis. It's up there with films like Birth of a Nation or City Lights as some of the greatest achievements in silent cinema. You have to see this film because of its influence on films like Blade Runner, Star Wars, and just science fiction as a genre. And it's a true science fiction epic. And thanks to the recent restoration, we're finally able to get a clear picture, a full picture of what the story was about. For instance, there was a plot line with a character called 1811 who disguised himself as Frater because Frater wanted him to send a message to his friend Josephat. And he gets captured by the Thin Man. There's another interesting character. The character of the Thin Man is like this black hat with a wide brim. He's wearing all black, and he's almost like a robot in a sense. Almost has like this he's got like this head, almost like a Buzz Lightyear head. And it's an interesting sequence. I'm not going to say it's oh my god amazing, and especially since the print is so damaged, but it adds to the story. It makes Metropolis an ensemble piece rather than a singular story about a white messiah. And that's probably why I enjoy Metropolis more than the average white messiah story. It's not just about the character of Frater, it's about Maria, Futura, Rotwang, Joe Fraterson, the workers. It's a big movie. It's the bigger picture, and I think Fritz Lang really delivers here. Possibly one of the 10 greatest silent films ever made. On SilentEra.com, they ranked Metropolis as the second greatest, or at least second most popular silent film on the website. Number 1 being The General, and underneath Metropolis, you had, I think you had Nosferatu underneath there. I'm not sure. I know City Lights was number 4. And it's a really impressive list, and Metropolis comes in number 2, and that's it really speaks to the influence of the film. The movie is also in the 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die book, a popular book that I constantly try to keep track of. If I'm not mistaken, you can find Metropolis on Netflix. Last time I checked, I saw it there. The Marauder cut, which has like a rock theme and is color tinted, you can find on Netflix if I'm not mistaken either. And you can also find it on Blu-ray through Kino. It's a very nostalgic trip to the 1980s. And I wasn't there in the 80s, so you guys can enjoy that. And that's it. I think out of all the silent films I've talked about on Silent Film Saturday, this might be the best. I couldn't recommend this film more. Go get this Blu-ray or the 2-disc, or is it 2-disc? Might have been, get the DVD. However you can watch the complete cut, watch it. Next week I shall be talking about a Lon Chaney film that isn't so good. I felt I had to balance this out a bit. Next week we'll be talking about 1925's The Monster. And that'll be not a favorite of mine. It's not a favorite of mine, so that might be the worst film I've reviewed on this page so far. But wish me luck with that review, and I'll see you guys next week for the 15th episode of Silent Film Saturday. Be sure to check out the Facebook and Twitter pages that I have in the description below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, like, comment, and you can send me a personal message with a question. I'll see you guys later.